Good evening, Geek Girl Cosplay. It is exciting. I am your host, as it were, Tori Stenmark. You can find me online as Tereshkova Costuming on Instagram and Facebook, and social media parts of the internet. So, our plan for today is to do some actual for real dyeing. That's an actual part of my project. So I'm going to walk you through fabric dyes. This draws a little bit on my background as an organic chemist. Yeah, gonna do that. So feel free, I am keeping an eye on chat via my phone because that's how technology works. So feel free to ask questions, comments, anything like that in the chat. So yeah. We're gonna do some show and tell. So, but that's gonna be at the end of it. So, for those of you that missed last week or last month, excuse me, those of you that missed last month, it was great. You should go catch up. It should be on our back scroll. I am doing a 5-part series on costuming and cosplay and sort of walking you through one of my costume projects. And that project is this gown of Padme Amidala's here. This is from Star Wars Episode 2, which she wears on Tatooine for a little bit. Yeah, so that's what I've made. Like, spoiler alert, I finished it almost completely. And so I'm walking you through it after the fact. But yeah, so that's what have made, and that's what we're going to talk about. So, I wanted to start with a little bit of show and tell on the costume I'm wearing, which has nothing to do with fabric dyes, but it has some stuff to do with fabric techniques and treatments and stuff. So we're going to start there. This is my Ellen Ripley from Alien costume here. It is basically 0% screen accurate, but it's really recognizable and it's really comfortable, and I'm not worried about getting chemicals on it. Right? You can see over here, we're going to be playing with fabric dyes. We're going to be playing with, you can't entirely read the label. We're going to be playing with soda ash, which is a pretty caustic base. And I wasn't going to wear anything delicate. So this is a Nomex jumpsuit here, to which I added the screen accurate Nostromo crew patches on the multiple layers of work shirts here are reasonably accurate. So this is details, because once you start me talking, I don't stop. Is really the problem that we're having here. So some of my favorite details of this here are this double-sided watch here. So Ripley wears 2 digital watches stuck together. It's fascinating because her watches are really expensive because they're digital. They're like the first digital watch Casio ever made, and they're worn on screen by Ellen Ripley. So yeah, so they're very expensive. If you go looking for them now, they're very expensive. But this is a calculator watch, as you can kind of see there. It's a calculator watch. It's the right size and shape, and it was $15 on eBay for each one, so like $30. And I welded them together with some zip ties. You gonna focus? I connected them with a couple zip ties to hold them together and put the orange backing on there. So that's one of my favorite details. And the other detail that I am just ridiculously fond of, let's see here, nope. There we go. So the other detail that I love here is the collar. So it's a painter's work shirt, right? Like just a white painter's work shirt. The collar details have these little pink trim on there. If you look on camera, it's very blatantly clear that all they did was just sew the bias trim on under it and leave the raw edges exposed. Like, you can clearly see it on all of their shirts. That's all they did. So that's all I did, which was great because it was really easy to do. So we've got details like that. The pin and patch are screen accurate for Ripley here for her. It's, I think, engineering, and then like the wings are, because she's she's up in the command structure. She's one of the officers of the Nostromo. which of course are all space truckers. And then this is the correct patch for her. Yeah. So it's super comfy. So again, not quite screen accurate, but I just use Converse with it. Where are my shoes? There you go. I just wear my Converse, which are left over from my 10th Doctor cosplay. So yeah, it's real great. It's real great. You can, if you want, be incredibly detail oriented and picky about your aliens cosplay, and a lot of people are. A lot of people are looking for the exact military surplus jumpsuits that are, I think, they're British military from like the 1950s, 1960s, because Alien was made in 1978. It came out in 79. So you have to find military surplus from many years ago that everyone has already bought up all of, because everyone who wants it, you know, everyone who knows, oh yeah, this is what the Alien crew wore, so they all bought them all. So finding them is expensive if you can find them. And so I was like, I inherited this jumpsuit. A friend of mine bought the wrong size and was like, oh, well, I need to order a different size, but like, this might fit you. Do you want it? And I went, sure, let's do something comfortable and practical. But I made a bad life choice, which is related to what we're doing tonight. Oh, that's what I forgot to find. I'll find a thing for show and tell later. The Alien crew suits are not this dark blue color. They're sort of a lighter teal. Let's see. Oh, somebody want to know where I got the patches. All of these are from a website called patchesandpins.com. They are all fully accurate. I just ordered them all in one go. Patchesandpins.com. Unless it's pins and patches, it's one of those two. Yeah, so I got this blue jumpsuit, and theirs are sort of a lighter green gray kind of color. And I was like, well, I wonder if I can lighten the color with bleach. Now, this is polyester, right? It's Nomex. Like I said, it's polyester. It's very durable. And I was like, I probably can't, so I'm going to use lots of bleach. This was, reader, this is a bad plan. So I said, all right, I will make a reasonably concentrated bleach solution, stick it in a bucket, and stick the jumpsuit in there overnight, and I'll come back and wash it the next day. It'll be great. And I'll see if it, probably won't, but I'll see if it lightens the fabric. So it didn't lighten the color at all. It did soften the fabric a little bit, which is nice, but it dissolved the thread. And you know what thread does? It holds a garment together. So I dissolved almost all of the thread in this jumpsuit and had to re-sew almost every single seam in this jumpsuit. And I did this years ago. Like, I've worn this to Geek Girl Con like 2015, 16, somewhere there, like years and years ago. I've had this for a long time. And and every time I wear it, I make more repairs. Like, I fixed it the first time. Every time I try it on, I do more repairs. So for instance, today I was checking my pockets and this pocket flap tore off in my hands. So it's currently being held on with safety pins. I don't know how well you can see them. It's being held on with safety pins because, because it just tore off in my hands. And I was like, oh, I pinned it back on there because I need to use this pocket. It's a good pocket. I got to put stuff in the pocket. But yeah. So don't do that. Bleach has its place. Those of you who were in the mask making workshop we did last week, we talked a little bit about bleach. If you're careful, you can use bleach to remove color from fabrics that color will remove from, that was put on in a process that can be removable. And if you then remove it, you get all kinds of, you can get really cool effects, and I'll show you some of those later on. But if you have a really durable polyester fabric, you're not getting the color out of it. Cotton, you can usually get the color out of things like cotton or more natural fibers, but polyester is its own special sort of hell when it comes to dyeing and color changing it in any way, shape, or form. So, yeah, so pockets are essential. That's the great thing about this, right? I got 2 breast pockets. Women's clothes never have breast pockets. Small rant. I use them all the time, or I would when my clothes have them. And then I've got my cargo pants pockets here, which is pretty nice. I like that in a jumpsuit. These don't have any others. Sometimes, you get some that have leg pockets, but this one doesn't. Cosplay with pockets is really important. All right. So let's see. So that's sort of my show and tell here. And I pin curled my hair. Normally I wear a wig, but because we're a year and a half into a pandemic and I haven't gotten my hair cut since February of 2020, when I normally get it cut every 2 months, I was able to pin curl it and make it do something approximating Ripley's hair. But it's also a pain in the butt to deal with, so I don't do it normally. So let's talk about fabric dyes. So as I said, I am an organic chemist by training, and that's what dye is. And that was sort of one of the first organic synthesis projects was to come up with artificial dyes. So people have been coloring clothing for as long as people have been wearing clothing, right? You have royal purple or imperial purple from Rome. You have these gorgeous colors of reds throughout Egypt, and you can use onion skins, you can use turmeric. If you go through your spice cabinet, like whatever's in your spice cabinet, you almost certainly have stuff that can be used to dye fabric. One of my favorite natural dyes is turmeric, that nice bright yellow color that you get, the spices, it'll stain anything that way. I've dyed clothes a really nice yellow with it. But we're going to use synthetic colors because it's more controllable here. You can do more things on purpose and you can do things more repeatably. Because every turmeric root that you get is a little different, right? It's a plant, it's natural. But when you get artificial dyes, you know what goes into them. So the first synthetic dyes were invented in I want to say late 17, early 1800s. The first one was mauvine, which is mauve, a nice shade of kind of a purple thing. And it sort of exploded from there. Now, the way dye works is that you start with preferably white fabric. Let's go with something a little nicer. You start with white fabric, and fabric is made, like everything, is made up of molecules. And these molecules have empty binding sites. You can think of it as open hands. And if you mix them with dyes, the dye molecules can fit into those hands, can grab on and hold on and attach to the fabric. So you take brightly colored separate molecules and you chemically bond them permanently to the fabric. That's a dye. What the molecule is depends a little bit on what color you want, but also depends on what the fabric is. What kind of gaps, what kind of hands is the fabric holding out? And it comes in two types. We're going to talk about both of them today, but we're going to focus on the one I used for my Padme project, this Padme project. And that is, you can have plant-based fibers, or you can have animal-based fibers. And fiber recognition is its whole other class on its own. So you're just going to have to trust me on this. Unless I'm trying, we'll see how timing goes. There's an optional diversion, but it depends on how timing goes. So this is, we're going to do this on the small cam. So this fabric here is denim. This is white denim. So I know you normally think of denim as being like your jeans, which are always blue, unless they're like black or it's, whatever weird colors you got going on. But this is denim. And of course, because it's white on white, it's not playing nicely here. There you go. But it's got this nice little built-in texture you can kind of see here. You can see this twill texture. Top side, bottom side. Denim is made of cotton, and cotton is a plant. Other plant-based fibers are linen, rayon. Those are the big ones. Cotton and linen here. Cotton and linen are made up of cellulose, which is what paper is made out of too. They're all the same kind of thing. And they form a certain type of bonds with fabric. So with cotton, you want to use what we call, let me just check here, what we call fiber reactive dye. Here you can see Dharma Fiber Reactive Dye. Dharma is the brand name, so Dharma Trading Company is where I get all of my dyes and most of my dyeable fabric from, because it is really great stuff. So they know what they're doing. They have great advice. It's super great. So Fiber Reactive Dye, which comes in a white top with a black canister, goes with cotton or linen. The other types of dye, looks like I only grabbed the one here. No. Yes, no. They've changed their labeling. That's my problem. Here, this is black on black. There we go. The other type of plant, the other type of fabric, go with that. The other type of fabric is animal-based fabric. Here, your animal-based fabrics are silk and wool and leather. So silk is based on bugs, which are like, biologically speaking, they're not animals, they're insects, they're their own thing, but we sort of class them in there because they are made up of proteins. Plant-based fibers are made up of starches, cellulose. These are made up of proteins. So this is silk charmeuse here. And you can, this kind of camera is just not going to capture it. But the thing about silk is that it's got this beautiful luster and sort of subtle sheen to it. There's a lot of different ways you can treat silk, but it's made out of a protein. So is wool. I don't have any scraps of wool because I don't usually dye it. What I've needed wool for, it's been easier to just buy it because it's harder to work with. But wool is made out of the same stuff your hair is made out of. And it's a protein just like this. So your protein-based fabrics need acid dye. Focus. So this is the same company, Dharma Acid Dye, white canister, black lid, just to make it easier to tell them apart when you have them all sitting together on your shelf. And it gives you the information with the 4119, Cayenne Red, how much it is. It also tells you what the dye lot is. It tells you the batch when they made it, because sometimes, even on a big scale, there can be a little variation between batches, between dye lots. So it's useful to know exactly what dye lot you have in case you need to reorder. You can say, hey, can you get me more of this exact dye lot? And sometimes the answer is, we sold that to you 5 years ago? No, sorry. And sometimes the answer is, oh yeah, sure, you just bought that, we've got plenty more. So buy as much as you think you'll need, which I think is the same thing for like yarn when you're knitting stuff. Buy as much as you think you'll need or a little extra. So acid dyes for silk, fiber reactive dyes for cotton. Now we're going to see some silk dyes or the result of some silk dyes later on upstairs, but my dyed silk garments don't get to come to the kitchen, right? There is mess that's going to happen here. They don't get to play there. They are far away. We're going to go on a field trip later tonight. So we're going to deal, I brought both to play with because we're going to play around a little bit. But we're going to deal mostly with our fiber reactive dye here, which are going to grab on to the cellulose molecules in cotton. Now, Padme's gown, as we see it there in that photograph, is a really light blue. I hate fabric sourcing so much sometimes, and I hate color sourcing so much sometimes, because, so full body shots, you can kind of see it, although it comes out super tiny. Let me see if I can edit this on the fly. If I move this out where you can, nope, that's the background. That's a different looking color, right? Like that's a much greener kind of a color. I don't know if I don't care about Anakin. You're very nice. There we go. There's Padme. Blue, lighter blue again. Here's the two of them together. Darker blue, right? It depends on if you're looking at her in the shade or in the direct sunlight. It's just there's just so many different things. So anytime you're trying to match a certain color, good luck. Part of it is the Captain Kirk problem. If you're not familiar, if you look at the actual existing garments that remain from filming Star Trek versus what they would have looked like at the time in real life versus what they looked like on your TV screen, completely different. Kirk's garments are green. Captain Kirk wears green. But you're like, he wears yellow. Of course he wears command gold. Yeah, it looks that way. It looks yellow on our TV screens because of the quality of the lighting, the quality of the film, because it was film back in the 1960s, and the quality of the transmission. So if you're trying to make a Captain Kirk uniform or anything in that shade of green, you got to make some decisions. You got to decide, do you want it to look like it looked in real life to actual, William Shatner and his dressing crew? Do you want to make it look like what it looks like on your TV screen? There's not a right answer. It's just to make your best pick. Yes, it's the blue, black, or the white, gold dress thing. Exactly. Which is in, the problems with that one were light and shadow. So yeah. Yeah. So, and you see the same thing here. And just to make it even more better, it's not more better, just so we're quite clear on this. But just to show you, let me grab some pictures. So I talked last session about having an extensive collection of reference photos, and this is part of why. One of the things that we as Star Wars costumers are incredibly lucky to have is that people care a lot about Star Wars, and they care about Star Wars in a way that they put it in museums, which means you can actually see the real garment in a lot of cases. I'm just trying to get the image rotated so you don't have to stare at it sideways. Rotate. Again. Cool. All right. So there we go. Now you're all staring at my OBS because I don't have more than one screen. Let me at least block that out here. So this is a museum photo taken by an acquaintance of mine who was gracious enough to put all of her photos up on the internet here. But that looks kind of green, doesn't it? Like sort of a sage green kind of a thing. So again, what's it look like in real life? What's it look like in really bright Tatooine desert sunlight? What's it look like under staged promotional light? What's it look like in the shade on Tatooine? Take your pick, because you can only make it one color. So I agonized over this, as I agonize over all aspects of my costumes. And part of why I agonize so much is that I am a member of the Rebel Legion, which is a Lucasfilm recognized Star Wars costuming group for good guy costumes. And in order to be a member, you have to look like you've just stepped off the screen. Your costume has to be a perfect replica of whoever it is you're being. And so I was like, all right, I gotta get it right. Whatever it is, I gotta get it figured out and get it right. This is why a color card. Yes, Kaz is right. A color card is super useful for things like this to color correct everything. Can you not see that? Oh, why is it? What is it doing? Sorry, I'm looking at the screen over here, and now you're correct. It is not looking right. It's gonna update. Hopefully that's a little easier to read. Yeah, there we go. So you gotta make some choices. You gotta make a call. And my call, I'm gonna show you all my test swatches, but I left them upstairs. That is a little better. So, oh, did it move again? I swear I had this fixed and then it moved again. That's what happened. It keeps, OBS is like, would you like to be over here? Would you like to be over there? What do you want to see? Thank you for your patience with my technical issues. So all my test swatches are upstairs, and I will, look at those later. But I finally settled on a thing, right? Because you have to pick a thing. See better now, thanks. Yes. This is the thing. Because I had to pick something. So, yeah. What I ended up going with is a very light green with a little hint of blue in it. And when you change the lighting, it shifts colors in roughly the ways that it shifts on Natalie Portman in terms of slightly different lighting or slightly different anything. So that's what I ended up going with here. So we're going to talk about the stamping details a little bit later. But this is the cape here. It's got armholes. I don't want to. I will try it on, but I also don't want to risk getting, kitchen goo on it. So it goes on more or less like this, and then you have a cape, like so. You have a cape. It's great. It's very cozy, and you can see that it looks different. Again, the lighting shifts as I move it around, as I wear it in different lighting. If I get, further under the bright lights, if I get more sort of shadow going, it looks a little darker on the inside, the whole thing. So I'm really happy with how this has come out. Like, I really feel like it does what I want it to do. Is it perfect? Probably not, but I'm really happy with it. So there's that. So I brought this down here because I did all this, I dyed all these things, and I realized that one of the things I needed is that I should probably have color matching undergarments, because this is a crop top. And the problem with crop tops is that they have a tendency, you can either make them longer or they have a tendency to end up like accidentally showing a teensy tiny bit of like your bra strap line or whatever. And like, fine, but I don't want to keep yanking down on it when it's not supposed to do that. So I got a white cotton sports bra, and we're gonna dye it to match. Now, so that's our project for the evening. Half an hour in, we're gonna actually work on our project. So I'm taking a little bit of a liberty here because I'm gonna be a little flexible about color. Now, normally when I'm particular about color, I do 1 million tests like I did before, and I stress about it, but I can't really do that. So this is 94% organic cotton, 6% spandex. Cotton dyes great. This garment is made of cotton. It's like thick t-shirt material. It's just so cozy and soft. It's amazing. So that's what this is made out of. This has some spandex. This is mostly cotton. The cotton should take dye pretty much like the cape did, like the whole outfit did. But the spandex is kind of a mystery. So I don't know for sure how it's going to come in. Also, I can't cut out samples. I bought the one garment. I can't cut out samples and test it. I guess I could have. I could have bought a second one to cut up. But I decided, because the whole point is just so that it's not like beige or bright white. If it's not exactly a perfect color match, that's fine. I'm not going to sweat it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through the dyeing process for this, just like I did for the big one, which means it's notebook time. So remember how I told you I was an organic chemist? I keep lab notebooks. I keep the exact same kind of lab notebooks that I have my students keep in chem lab. So fabric dye tests starting December of 2019 here. So I'd been working on it for a while. And it sort of talks about, you know, what I used, what you can see I've got mass values, I've got volume data here, amount of each thing, certain amount of salt, various chemicals, weight of the fabric, you know, trying things out. And it walks through, and like I said, all the samples for these are upstairs still. But it kind of walks through. All right, I did some tests with B is for a blue dye, G is for a green dye. Let's see if I wrote those down. I did. So I had some tests on what fabrics, you know, what did I use here? What was I thinking about using? And just tried a bunch of different things until I got somewhere where I was reasonably happy. Then I have patterns, dyeing for real, which I did in March. So I started thinking of testing out dyes in, was it November? Started in late December, this 20th December. Didn't start doing the dyeing until March. Sometimes it just takes a while to get that to happen, you know, to go through and test everything. And sometimes, you know, you just don't have the motivation or the spoons to do it. And, you know, we all know stuff was getting exciting, had gotten pretty exciting by March 2020. I was also preparing for Emerald City Comic Con. We were gonna be amazing at Emerald City Comic Con, and we still are going to. Kaz, who was in the chat, we will meet on the field of battle if you'll still hear. We're still on. The plan for that was actually for me to be Padme Amidala for a skit that involved a Jedi and Sith fighting and her narrating. So it'll happen someday. So, you know, it takes time. These things happen. But I've got all my notes for dyeing for real here. I've got the mass of the fabric. I've got the mass of dye, the color, the lot number. Again, if I need more of it, I can go look that up and use more of that exact same dye lot. And it walks through everything here. Now I was dyeing 6 pounds of fabric and 6 pounds of like big, bulky, voluminous fabric. So for that, I did it in the washing machine. We're not going to use the washing machine. That's not usually my preference just because it's harder to control. And you got to stand there and babysit it. I have some great dramatic, because I was bored in the laundry room, right? So I have some great dramatic angle selfies of me working on my fabric dyes, because what else are you going to do? You got to reset the washing machine every few minutes to make sure it doesn't drain. So, but I worked through all this. This is really useful because it tells me my percentages. So I'm just going to do the exact same percentage, the exact same amounts, and we're over here on Dying for Geek Girl Con. There's our date here, 2021, with some prep notes already. So that's the plan here. You always pre-wash your fabric. So I've washed that off camera. You didn't need to watch me wash and dry fabric. That's boring. But you always pre-wash your fabric. Make sure you do that. You want to set up your dye bath first. Now, the general advice is that you should have separate tools for dyeing and for eating. You should not mix the two of them. This is 100% correct for anything made out of plastic. So it's a very subtle effect, but if you look carefully at this spoon, you can actually kind of see that the handle is lighter gray and the spoon is darker because the spoon has been in a lot of dye baths, and plastic is porous enough to pick up color. So you can kind of see that it's gray fading to sort of what happens if you mix it with dark blue and then like also dark red. You get this color gradient. So this is my dye spoon. Anything metal, same deal. I've got a big dye pot that's aluminum that I got at Seattle Restaurant Supply, which is a great source for these kinds of things because it's cheap and it's high volume, because a restaurant needs a big pot. So if you need big pots, pans, stuff like that for dyeing, I recommend them. They're up Aurora a ways. However, and this is my experience as an organic chemist, we wash and reuse glassware all the time in chem lab. And by that, I mean actual glass. So my personal feeling, and again, this is against most people's recommendation, but I am a trained chemist, so I feel safe with it. If it's glass or ceramic, if it's non-porous and you can run it through the dishwasher, I go ahead and use the same ones that I use for food, and nobody's died yet in my house or even gotten sick or anything like that. Like I said, it is technically against most recommendations, but I feel safe with it. Make your own life choices. If you want to be extra certain, then get separate casserole dishes or whatever. But you want to do that. So let's see. So you can play around a little bit with the exact order, but basically you want to set up your dye bath with water, your dye, your salt, and mix those first. Water, dye, and salt. You're going to add your fabric. Then you're going to add a little bit of concentrated base here, because in order to get the fabric and the dye to bond properly, to hang out together, you need to make it very basic. So we're going to add soda ash or sodium carbonate to do that. The process is not very much like tie-dyeing anything, but the chemicals are the same. We're just doing it on a different scale than tie-dyes. Speaking of scales, you need at least one. I use 2. And switch to second camera. I do like having second camera. This is kind of fun. All right. So I am a chemist, which means that I do not believe in the imperial system. Oh, that's nice. I'm glad that's showing up well on camera. Lies. Yeah, it's just someone's frame rate is not happy. All right. So you set it to 0 grams and you stick your fabric on it, because you need to know what the fabric weighs or masses. Pick one. Pick a number. We're going to go with 63. It's trying to make up its tiny little mind, and we're going to go with 63 grams. It's flickering a little bit, which is honestly not uncommon with things like this. Why are you vertical, camera? You were horizontal over here. There we go. So 63 grams, white sports bra, 94% cotton. So what I'm writing down here, not that you can necessarily read my handwriting, I had the mass, and then I went ahead and described what I'm using down to the composition, because I'm gonna want that information. If I don't have it now, at some point I'm gonna want it. So I've got my mass here. That determines how much dye to use. Cayenne red, no, we're just gonna put the wrong dyes over here, because otherwise I will grab them. I'm gonna need that one in a sec. Seafoam. We're just gonna clear that out of the way, because I don't want to grab the wrong items by accident. All right, so if I've got 63, based on my previous calculations, I need my calculator. I need the stream to go away, thank you. So I need 1.3% weight of the fabric in dye. So I take my 63 grams of sports bra and I multiply it by 0.013 here. I need 0.819 grams. Is that right? No, that's not right. Yes, I've missed a decimal place. What we actually want here is 63 times 0.0013. Always stop and check your numbers because inevitably they're going to feel weird and like something is not right with these numbers. And yeah, okay. We're going to come back to the chat. The calculator on my watch. I could have used my watch calculator, but I just used my phone calculator because I'm not 100% convinced I know how to work it. I definitely bought the watch calculator for the aesthetic, not for the actually being practical about anything. So, but like, stop for a minute and think about how much this needs. So I need a very small amount of dye, which is why I have two scales. Back up. Yes. Now, to be fair to your teachers, Kaz, who said you wouldn't always have a calculator available, the problem with this as a calculator is that it also has the internet on it. And like, wow, I get distracted easy. Which is what I sometimes tell my students, like, yeah, it's convenient. But on an exam, you need to use a dedicated calculator so that you can't look anything up and so that you don't get distracted and spend half an hour screwing around on Twitter when you're supposed to be taking your dang test. Not that I speak from personal experience. No, I do have some great cheating stories of people who were clearly looking things up on their phones, though. All right. So this is my other scale. Wake up. Thank you. It is clearly a friend to General Kenobi because it likes to say, hello there. Nope. So you tear it out so that there's nothing on there. And now I want to mass out a very tiny amount of my dye here. I'm going to go ahead and use a clear plastic cup, clear so that we can see it because it's more interesting that way. And just plastic because it's going to be disposable. It will end up in the recycling. All right. So now I need you to wake up, screen. I need you to. So the thing about this scale is that it does pretty good for tiny numbers, but it's not perfect. So 0.08. So I've got, again, a plastic spoon, which I believe is left over from, no, stop, I need you to stay lit up. Come on, thank you. 0.014. My spoon is left over, I'm pretty sure, from takeout. Now, the thing and I have some, you have to be careful about this, and like sometimes it just doesn't cooperate. But I managed to put too much in, and so now I have to take some back out. And then put a little bit back in, and we're just sort of playing stupid games. It's fun. No. And so this is part of why I have to kind of accept that it'll have some in it, that the color will be about right, but like, yeah. .10. 0.08. All right. So, and again, organic chemistry lab handling skills, honestly. in terms of these. You want to be careful not to breathe the powder. Why did you lock screen? You want to be careful not to breathe the powder because it's not actually good for you. If you're handling like really big volumes of dust, of powder, a mask, like an N95 rated, particle rated mask is not a bad idea, or a respirator or something like that. All right, so 0.08 grams, we are writing it down because, as Adam Savage will tell you, the difference between screwing around and science is writing it down. Apparently one of his crew members actually said that first, and Adam was like, wait, can I say that on camera? I want to say that on camera because it's great, it's perfect. And I have shamelessly stolen it from Adam again. So, grams. E5 Seafoam Dye, like so, just to get that written down here. Now, my final test, what I did with the actual garment, and we'll see my test swatches in a minute, is I dyed the garments, and it came out lighter than the tests had, and it just was a little bit too much lighter than I wasn't quite happy with it. So I dumped the whole thing back into the washer and added a tiny little bit of a blue dye to get just a little bit of a blue overlay going. And it worked really, really well. That's what gave me that color that ended up being exactly what I wanted it to be. Now, I'm not gonna, because I sort of eyeballed that previous one. Like I did. So my notes here are used approximately 2 tablespoons of dye for 6 ounces or 6 pounds or whatever. So like a lot, but still, I wasn't really. I was there was sort of a wing and a prayer going on there. So that's kind of what I'm going to do here. We're gonna slide that aside. So here's my open container. This is what is called Alpine Blue, and you can see the powder. The color of the powder doesn't necessarily match the color of the final product. It's actually really kind of fascinating to do that, and we'll look at that in a sec here. So I'm just gonna kind of get a sort of a hint of that on there, like it's sort of a faint coloration, and just sort of dunk that in there. And I'll just stir that with that end of the spoon, and we're gonna call that good. Dyeing is a science, so here's my Seafoam Green Dye. I forgot to show you that, which is kind of interesting because it's not uniform, right? It's kind of mottled, like it's pale green, but there's like little tiny grains of darker color in there. That's the fact, and that's true of a lot of dyes where you get that sort of different color. Mythbusters gave us so many good life lessons about explosives. They are my very favorites, and I use their videos in class sometimes, and sometimes I'm like, your YouTube search term is Mythbusters thus and such. Go forth and watch. Thermite is a good one. They did some great thermite stuff. Yeah. There's a really great foundation that was set up in Grant Imahara's name that does some really cool stuff for getting, towards getting kids into STEM and work around getting Asian Americans to get into STEM and stay in STEM, right? Because I have a rant. I will hold off on the rant because we need to build some stuff. The problem isn't people being interested in STEM. The problem is that the STEM community is not as welcoming as it needs to be. So that's my. So we've got our dye in the container, that's where we want it. That's great. So we're going to add some warm water. I don't want to get it too hot yet, simply because this is a plastic cup meant for cold beverages, and I don't want to melt it. So I've got slightly warm water, and then I'm going to kick the heat up. So I was heating stuff on my kettle. over here. Yep, that's melting all right. Good times. But you always want to mix it separate because you want to get the dye dissolved first. My cup is not happy with my hot water experiences because you can maybe see that it sort of is both shrank and curved. So that's fun. But you always, so moral of the story, don't do that. I do a lot of the silk dyes don't need to be as hot is part of why I thought that might have worked. But it didn't. It's okay. We caught it in time. Nothing actually melted down on us, which is the important part here. So I grabbed a paper plate to set things down on, like so. Yeah, so you always pre-dissolve your dye because sometimes the dye isn't uniform and you want to make sure that it's all nicely dissolved and mixed up there before you add it to your fabric, because otherwise your fabric might get splotches and you don't want it to be unevenly dyed. Can there be chemistry without melting? Not if you're having fun with it. I don't know. Like, yes, but it's more fun if there's some kind of melting or science or stuff. Science reminds me that I should go ahead and get my hair out of my face. So in the interest of remaining on theme for aliens, my hair tie is a Union bandana here, AFT Washington, AFL-CIO. And I will follow in Parker and Vasquez's footsteps and put my hair in a bandana just to make it sure that it stays out of my face. Because it turns out that if your hair is in your face, it's a bad day for everyone, science-wise. The curls are surprisingly out of my face, but it's still good practice. And like, Vasquez is cool as heck, so why wouldn't you want to be like her? Parker's also pretty cool. Not like, it's hard to be as cool as Vasquez, but like, one try. So, yeah, so we've got our dye bath set up here. We've got dye in it. And then we duplicate. Then we make notes here. Dipped spoon handle in Alpine Blue, which is the other dye here. So we've got the dye bath. We need to add salt to it. Now what the salt is going to do is help make sure that the material sticks to, that the dye sticks to the fabric and comes out of solution. So because dye is water soluble, that it wouldn't work if it didn't dissolve in water, but you need to convince it to stick to the fabric instead of the water. The salt helps do that by making the water less friendly. So you're supposed to use canning and pickling salt, but I seem to be out of it. What if didn't go to sleep? I seem to be out of canning and pickling salt, so I'm just going to go ahead and use some kosher salt. Canning and pickling salt is preferred because it is very pure and it doesn't have, like, it's very, very small, fine particles, so it cleanly dissolves. Kosher salt works as well because it's just salt. This does have an anti-caking agent. I don't know how well, if that's readable at all, but it does have an it has no iodide because it's kosher, but it does have an anti-caking agent, which isn't ideal, but it'll be okay. I'm not going to add a whole lot of it. So we're just going to add a little bit here and then stir to get that to dissolve. As you would dissolve, you would think about dissolve. Just to make the environment a little less friendly to the dye so that the dye will be more likely to go, oh yes, my friend, the fabric, let's stick with that, like so. So salt, dye, water. We're gonna want more water than is currently in there. You want enough water for your garment or your fabric to swim freely. So I'm going to fill it around, I don't know, half full or so. It's very, very pale because that's what we want out of it. And honestly, if this comes out too pale, I will just re-dye it later. So I'm not too worried about it. You get your garment wet. If it's not wet, when you put it in there, the water will wick into the fabric and it might do that unevenly and take the dye unevenly. So if you get it wet, it'll all be wet evenly, and then the dye can just grab on wherever it finds it, as opposed to sucking in right where you add it. If you want to do that on purpose, you certainly can. So I'm using the high-tech technique of sticking it in the sink and just rinsing it, just washing it with water. Warm or cold, doesn't really matter. Squeeze it out so it's not too drippy. Should be good. Then you just sort of dunk it in there. Nope. You want to get the whole thing in there, and you want to not stick the fabric, or you want to not stick your fingers in near boiling water, which is why we use a spoon. And I want to get the whole thing underwater. So if I need to add more water, I can do that. But I think it'll be okay. Don't stick your fingers right in it, like so. Boop, boop, boop. Yeah. So it does seem to be, it's a little hard to tell, but it does seem to be sort of gradually taking the fabric or the color. What if you stopped doing this, camera? It's like, but save battery. I'm like, you're plugged in. Stop saving battery. So we're going to let this hang out for a little bit. Doesn't need to hang out super, super long. As I keep sticking my fingers in boiling water. I have a master's degree in science and everything. You'd think I'd remember that hot things are hot. Gonna let that think about these things briefly while we go ahead and prepare our soda ash bath. Now, like I said, I usually go ahead, as long as it's a non-porous ceramic that I can wash, I'm okay with it. So this is from the American Chemical Society here. This is my lithium anniversary of having been a member, my 3-year anniversary. They give you some nice facts about lithium, and it says, congratulations. They sent me one a year up through the first 4 years. And then year 5 was a certificate, and they never sent me any more mugs. And on the one hand, I only need so many mugs. On the other hand, come on, cheapskates, I want more anniversary mugs. This idea is responsible for the single best and nerdiest gift I've ever given anyone, which is, so my parents are from Colorado. They met there, they were married there, they've lived there almost ever since I was born and raised there. They're never going to live anywhere else. They did briefly for Dad's work, and nope, not that, never doing that again. So they're really they're from Colorado and they love it. And it turns out that the element of atomic number 25, manganese, is part of Colorado's state mineral, which is manganese carbonate or rhodochrosite. So for their 25th wedding anniversary, I found them this beautiful crystal specimen of rhodochrosite, like small, but like museum quality, just gorgeous piece. And I sent them a nice, packaged it up, sent them a letter and said, I hope this reminds you of the wonderful 25 years you spent together in Colorado so far, and not how much of a giant dork your daughter is that you raised in that time. Um, and they really loved it, actually, which was nice because I was like, they'll probably love it, but like, wow, I'm a giant dork. So while this is sitting here and thinking about what it's doing, and it is taking the color, it's just being slow and gentle about it. We need to change the pH of it a little bit. And how we're gonna do that, I'm just going through all my old plastic silverware from when we get takeout. How we're gonna do that is a little bit of sodium carbonate, this soda ash. I really need you to here. We're just gonna take a moment to fix the settings on my device. I this is I'm just gonna turn auto option never. This is a really old phone. And so it's sort of I've resurrected it specifically to be my side camera so that I can use my actual phone that like connects to stuff to follow the chat here. So okay, you think it's cute. All right, I hope you think it's cute. I hope they thought it was cute because they have to live with me. Well, not literally live with me anymore, but they have to deal with the fact that I am in fact their daughter. All right, so we're preparing our concentrated soda ash bath while that sits. This you want to be super careful with. I was once doing some tie-dye as part of a team bonding activity and stuck my entire arm in the bath of concentrated soda ash and then was like, why does my arm itch? That's weird. Don't do that. This is very finely powdered, which is why it is in triple containment right now. It's in 3 bags because nobody wants to deal with it any more than they absolutely have to. 4 bags? There we go. So again, I don't care, or I'm not being super, super precise here, but I'm going to get maybe estimating at about a teaspoon for this much water. The amount of soda ash you use depends on the amount of water, not on the amount of dye or fabric. It depends on the overall volume of water. So then we're going to shove these bags back inside all of these other bags. Ziploc it shut. Seal that up. Twist ties, and then I'm going to immediately go and wash my hands because I've gotten this dust all over everything, and nobody wants that. Least of all me. Yep, I can feel that it's on my hands because my hands feel slippery, which is a fun story as I'm completely off camera for y'all. Acid, if you get like concentrated hydrochloric or sulfuric acid on yourself, acid burns immediately. It immediately hits your pain receptors. Base doesn't. Base starts burning. Base starts doing damage immediately, but it does not start causing pain immediately, which is real fun because sometimes you don't realize that the water droplet on your skin is actually a base droplet until it starts getting through the first couple layers and starts doing some real damage, and then you go, oh, ow, ow, oh, that's fun. The scars are gone now, but they were scars for quite a while because I knew it had hit me. This was in lab, and I knew it had hit me, but I had my hands full of something very delicate that I couldn't put down or walk away from or any of that. So I was like, I just gotta sit here and it took several seconds, like I don't know how long, but it took quite a while before the pain actually kicked in. Then it was like, oh, ow, 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 ow. Couldn't put it down, and then finally was able to stick my arm under the sink. So don't do that. Pro tips. Bad plans. So I've got some base in here, and I'm extra careful with that. kick my water back up. Doesn't need to be super hot. Particularly here because as the base dissolves, it's going to, it's an exothermic reaction. The dissolving of the base gives off heat. It's got a nice little basic solution. Now the problem here is that I don't want to just, and you can kind of start to see that it's not quite as bright white as it was, like it has taken some color. But you can see there's still plenty of color in the fabric. I don't want that thing. I want not that. So what I'm going to do here, normally I would just shove the fabric to one side, but I can't really, this dye bath is a little too small for that. So I'm just going to transfer this to a different container entirely, different second casserole dish. Pour this in here, go ahead and stir that around. The idea is to gradually sort of change the pH environment. And we'll just dunk this back in and make sure it gets all wet again. Now, because we want to, we want to see something like this is sort of working. We're going to just sort of let it sit for a while. And if I have to let it, if it has to sit longer, we'll see. It's an experiment. But y'all want to see some fabric change color, right? I'm going to assume that the answer is yes, whether or not you answer in text, because come on, the fabric make pretty colors. That's the fun part. We're going to not do this on super high heat. All right. We have, let's go with this here. This is Cayenne Red Acid Dye here. Because I have a bunch of dyes and I picked some more or less at random. And because I just want to make the pretty colors go pretty colors, so we have this nice dark red, I'm just gonna tap some in there. I don't really care how much. We're gonna put a small amount of this. Now this is my acid dye. And the reason I picked acid dye for this is because acid dye doesn't have to be done at quite such high temperatures. You still like to use warm water, but, and particularly just because we're screwing around, I don't want to melt my cup again. So I'm just going to run hot tap water into this. Once my tap water decides to be warm. Come on. You can get there. I believe in you. We are thinking about it. There we go. I'm just going to run some warm water into that. Now this here is kind of chalky looking, honestly. And that's because the dye isn't dissolved yet. Where did I put my other devices? Here. So that's can be a big problem with these kinds of things, is that the dye doesn't immediately dissolve. So you got to sort of stir it up a little bit, paste it up to get it to dissolve a little bit. It also depends on the concentration. So I'm just adding more tap water to get it up to a volume where it's easier to actually work with here. This is probably much more concentrated than I need it to be, particularly because what I'm going to dunk in it are like little scraps. But, one wants to see what these things are like. So acid dyes need warm water. They can, and like you often want to go ahead and keep them kind of warm, but they will work fine with lower temperatures. Let's grab some of this. Like so. So here's my silk. This is silk charmy. This is left over from Katniss Everdeen. We're gonna look at Katniss Everdeen next month. Like so. Yes, pretty colors is absolutely the right answer. Is Volumnia. It's always the right answer. So I'm gonna get it wet because wet. So remember how I talked about how acid dyes will dye proteins? Guess what your skin is made out of? It's a lot of things, but proteins are definitely part of it. So, and honestly, the other kinds of dye will dye skin as well. So you maybe kind of should be wearing gloves. It depends. A lot of times I don't worry about it just because it's small volumes or, whatever. I know I'm not going to be sticking my fingers in the dye bath here. Do, do, do. Do, do. Ta-da. Boom. Immediate color change. Just like not subtle, right? That was white moments ago. It is now nice dark red. And the thing I love about Dharma Trading Company is that the names of their colors are really usefully descriptive. How are we doing over here? We are definitely thinking about it. Looks like it's working. So it's contemplating its life. It's making some life choices, and we're letting it make them. The thing about Dharma Trading Company is that like their color choices are usually actually really descriptive with names. So like it's Cayenne Red. It's not like a super, super bright hot red, but it's definitely a nice sort of that warm orangey kind of a red, little darker, a little duller. I love this. So, ta-da, you dunk it in there. It's good. If you want to make extra sure, so the longer you leave it in there, the more concentrated it will get, the brighter the color. Up to a point, because the way this works is that the fabric only has so many ways it can hold hands with the dye. It only has so many sites the dye can bind to. And when you run out of them, you run out of them. So it'll get super concentrated, super bright up to a point here. So that is, all right, now when you're done, because I'm probably going to let the other stuff sit for a while. When you're done, what you do is you take it out of the dye bath, and you let it drip, and then you go rinse it in the sink. We're gonna, so I haven't, nobody cares about watching me wash my hands. That's boring. But watching the dye run out is actually going to be kind of instructive. So we're going to come over here and watch the kitchen sink. I cleaned it and everything. I cleaned my whole kitchen just for you. And the fact that the kitchen needed it to be cleaned for its own sake. So I've got my fabric coming out of the dye bath. Let me go ahead and stick it on a plate so I can carry it over here to our second camera. Running water, rinse it. The dye runs out. Can you see the floor of the sink here? The dye runs out of the fabric. It gets lighter because extra dye was hanging out next to the fabric that hadn't bonded to it. So now you can see it's quite a bit lighter because all that extra dark color had stuck to the fabric, but there wasn't as much room for it. So we stuck like that. You rinse it until the rinse water runs clear, however long that takes. So now we've got a much lighter orangier color. Part of that is also that I forgot to add the acid to that. It's called acid dye because it works better under acidic conditions. So you can go back, I'm just gonna leave this over here to dry. You can also go back and then add some vinegar. My hands are technically a little bit orange, but it's not too bad. It'll probably come off once I shower. Tabasco. Y'all were on Twitter, y'all were promised a tour of my kitchen, so let's go find the vinegar together. Hot sauce, other hot sauce, apple cider vinegar, don't use that. Worcestershire sauce. There we go. I transferred my vinegar to a separate mason jar because we had giant containers of it. And then God knows what has sedimented out at the bottom. But it's still vinegar, I promise. So because I'm not going to dunk this in the dye bath, I'm just going to use a normal, like, human spoon. In that lighting, it looks frighteningly like solar cherry. It does look like solar cherry. So for those of you who are not familiar with solar cherry is what the X-Wing Resistance pilot costumes are made out of. It is some of the worst fabric to deal with because it is outdoor patio furniture fabric. But man, the color is gorgeous. And for like pilot flight suits, you honestly kind of want that fabric. Yeah. So this actually, between the amount of rust on this mason jar lid, I'm going to go ahead and dispose of this and the fascinating amount of sediment. And like buy a normal, because the problem is if you buy vinegar for cleaning, you don't get small quantities of vinegar. So that's just vinegar, whatever. Let's take that in the sink. So I acidified my dye bath a little bit here, or a lot. I added several spoonfuls of vinegar. We're going to stir that up here. It's going to affect, so the fiber reactive dye, you want it to be basic, but for this, you want it to be acidic. So you got to pay attention to what kind of fabric dye you're using. Try that again, fresh strip, clean water. Fabric in the dye bath. My expectation is that this might be a little darker colored once it comes out of the dye bath. I'm also going to go ahead and leave it in there a little bit longer, maybe. We'll sort of stir it up there here. So same kind of thing going on. Gets lots of good color in there, and you just want to let it swim freely, stir it around. You can keep an eye on the temperature. It'll work a little better at higher temperatures, although my Padme gown ended up having to be dyed at room temperature and came out fine. So there's that. While it's thinking about that, I want to grab my other test samples here. There we go. And we're going to do smaller bits. So I've got two other kinds of fabric to experiment with here. I would label them if they weren't really unsubtly different. This is our, where's my camera? There we go. This is our denim from before. This is some terrible cheap polyester. Polyester is really hard to dye. You need special dyes for it, and you still kind of need to cross your fingers and pray that it's going to work. So I'm going to go ahead just to experiment with what's going to happen. We're going to dunk both of those in there and see what colors they manage to turn. Like so. Soup, fabric soup. This is, of course, it's not quite the right color, but my favorite thing about days when it's fabric dyeing day is the Klingon joke, today is a good day to dye, but D-Y-E, because fabric. So I have more than once posted photos to social media with that caption because I think I'm funny. And you can kind of see that stuff is taking the dye a little differently. Like we've got this, some of it's still really light orange. It's sort of variable. So we'll give it another moment or two here. And like I said, I still want to make sure to show you off stuff upstairs. So I don't want to spend forever here. All right. Clean up your counters if you get dye on them. because it will stain, or it could stain depending on what your counter is made of, and nobody wants to deal with that. Even though we have this nice sort of granite counter where you can't ever tell if something is that a piece of leftover chocolate or just the counter? I don't know. I have that thought far more often than I should have to. So I'm going to go ahead and call that camera over here, admire kitchen sink and drying fabric, and let's see what happens. Now, because I'm pretty comfortable with fabric identification and the feel of these things and the size of them, I didn't bother to label my swatches. If I'd put in a bunch of identical or near identical fabric swatches, I would have labeled them. I would have like written a little something in the corner or put a safety pin in one of them or something so I could tell them apart. But in this case, silk and denim and polyester feel completely different, and I'm very confident I can tell them apart. It is better practice to have labeled them. So I don't recommend not labeling them, but I do it anyway. All right. Yes, kitchen sink, very excited. I'm about to just dispose of this. Do not drink it. Definitely don't eat or drink around this stuff. I'm just gonna pour it down the drain with a bunch of rinse water. This is a small volume. It's not super acidic or basic or anything like that. You're just gonna run some extra water and put it down the drain. If you're doing industrial scale dyeing, then yeah, you gotta worry about your chemical waste. But I'm just running it down, plenty of water. You can see lots of good colors coming off. Just let that run. And then what I want to capture is the rinsing of this. So let's see if I can give you a better sort of sink angle. The dramatic kitchen sink angle. Here's my silk. It's holding the color better now that it's been acidified. Here's the acidified silk. And here's the earlier silk. There we go. So you can see the more orangey one and the redder one. The redder one is the one that was done with the acid. This is the one that I didn't acidify, and you can see the dramatic difference in what the color comes out. Sometimes you can do that on purpose. If you want to experiment with different colors, try changing the pH. Let it be more or less acidic. Here's my square of denim. I'm getting a lot of dye to rinse off of that. Like, it's definitely a little bit dyed. Like, it's definitely not white, but it's much lighter. Because denim isn't meant for acid dyes, or the other way around. Acid dyes aren't meant for denim. They're meant for silk and wool. So if I wanted to get this to take a little more, I might, I probably would have wanted to make it more basic. And then lastly, here's my, whoops, there we go. Here isn't my polyester. Boom. Like that didn't, that's still white. Polyester is terrible to dye. Like, it doesn't take dye well at all. Yeah. So we're gonna, I think it might have like a faint hint. I think it's like those memes about LaCroix, the LaCroix soda, where it's like, this flavor is strawberry, but with low battery. That's kind of what happened here. So here these are all laid out on my dish draining rack here. This is silk with the acid added. This is silk with no acid. You can see same color family, but not the same color. Over here, this is our denim, which took color, but not as vibrantly. And our polyester is pretty much pure white, like pretty much pure white. If you want polyester to dye, you can get there, but it's, you need high energy dye, like you need special kinds of dyes, yeah, you need special kinds of dyes and a lot of heat and a hope and a prayer. Like a lot of times it just doesn't work at all. Now you can get polyester clothes in different colors. And the reason you can do that is because when they make the polyester fibers, they add the color as they're creating the fibers, and then it sticks. I'm gonna see if I can get some of this orange off my hands, or at least get all the orange that can come off, so that it doesn't transfer to anything else, because I'm gonna go touch some stuff I don't want to be orange. So you're done with your dyeing, you rinse it till the water runs clear, and then you let it dry. What I typically do, if it's small scale, I just leave it there. If I get really impatient, I'll dry it with an iron or a hair dryer, but usually I just leave it. If it's big scale, then I go take it, then I take my entire dye bath to the bathtub, rinse it in the bathtub, and then take it straight upstairs and put it in the washing machine. With usually I do a rinse with just rinse water, and then with soap afterwards. Because you want to make sure any dye that didn't stick is gone. You don't want to leave those loose dye particles running around where they can bleed off and stick to other things. They can be uneven. If you've ever gotten like a brand new pair of really dark jeans and then your legs are blue because you sweat and the indigo dye gets transferred to your legs, that's the problem. And they kind of do it on purpose for the dye. Can you save the leftover dye? Hi, Sherry, nice to see you. You can, so I put it down the drain because I was done with it. You can, however, if you want something specific, if you want a specific color with the next batch of dye, you know, to get the very, very specific, precise colors, you want to use, you know, the exact weight of fabric and weight of dye. That dye cup, an unknown amount of fabric or an unknown amount of dye has stuck to the fabric. So even if I know what amount of dye I put in, the next time I add new fabric to that dye bath, it's anyone's guess as to what's in it. It's anyone's guess as to what the concentration is. Now, if you're fine just screwing around and seeing what happens, then by all means, have fun, try it and see. If you want a specific result, you got to start from scratch every time. But a lot of times you're just having fun and it's fine to play around with it. There's no, that's a little bit of what I'm doing here, honestly, with the sportswear I'm trying to dye, which is, again, it's not as white as it was. I think part of the problem here is that spandex that's in the weave. And again, I wasn't sure if it would take or not, so this was an experiment. But I think the spandex weave is making it hard to take. Like it's not quite white anymore, but it's also not the same dark blue that I was hoping for. So what I'm going to do, I don't want to leave it in here like overnight or anything like that. That way it doesn't end well. What I think I'm going to rinse it and see and dry it and see what it looks like. But what I suspect I'm going to have to do is just a higher concentration of dye, and maybe change the pH or the salt conditions a little bit here, because I'm still seeing a little bit of color in the dye bath. And like ideally, all of the dye you put in the bath ends up in the fabric. So you end up with a very lightly colored dye bath at the end if it's got any color to it at all. But this does still have some color in it. I'm going to go ahead and just real quick rinse this out. I'm not going to worry about a full, trying to figure out exactly what color it is now or anything like that. But I'll rinse it out, mostly to get the base out of it, that soda ash that nobody wants to deal with. So we'll rinse it out. Yeah, it's not pristine white, but it definitely didn't take the color the way I was hoping. But this is why we experiment. And worst case scenario, at least it sort of blends in, and I'll try dyeing it with more dye, and then if that fails and it turns like bright green, then I'll just buy another one. maybe I'll see if I can go shopping and find a blue sports bra even, or a light blue one. But this seemed like a fun project, and I'm not mad about it. So my roommates are used to me. So yes, I just left my sports bra on the dish tray. Um, they are used to these kinds of weird things that happen. All right. Now this is just sort of this is only a little bit of what you can do with fabric dyes. Um, we haven't even like touched on tie dye, which I don't usually spend a whole lot of, like, that's not my expertise. Don't put the dye back in the cabinet, just put the vinegar and the hot sauce. Cool. Um, so you can do tie dye, you can do all kinds of things. I've done bespoke stripes. I did some Hogwarts scarves. I did some Pride scarves for Jedi for Seattle Pride, which, you know, we will do again some year. It is one of the most fun events that I've done. I mean, I say that about every event, but it's true about every event. But Seattle Pride is really fun because they let you add like rainbows to your Jedi costumes and stuff. And so I've done lots of that kind of silk dyeing. But let's go look at some portfolio pieces. While I am transferring y'all upstairs, chat amongst yourselves, and I don't know, maybe, yeah, I don't know what to do. I was going to try and come up with a good discussion prompt for chat, but I don't know what it is. So chat amongst yourselves, and I will be right back. There we go. I forgot to unmute. Thank you. Sorry about that. Um, I undid the thing. So this is, apologies. Um, so Now you get to see all my windows again. Go away. Oh no, something is trying to make noises. All right. So this is the original gown. This is my Padme. The original gown is from what is one of the worst writing scenes in the prequels. I am not here to defend the writing quality of the prequels, but they're pretty. They're very pretty. And as soon as I saw this, this as several of the costumes I have made, I saw it and went, what if I were that? Could I be that? I want to be that. And so these that shows a little bit better here. So this is this sort of confection of pastels. And I said, what if I were that? And I spent a lot of time thinking about it. And then I did it. This is a piece that I consider one of my masterpieces. So I have entered a great many costume contests, and they break them down into the novice division, which is for people who are beginning costume contests. The scary people don't have to compete in don't compete in the novice division. I'm copying from Kevin Roche and Andy Tremblay, who did this presentation at my first big costume contest. The intermediate or journeyman division is for people who've won a few awards in the novice category, who are a little more experienced. The scary people don't compete in the journeyman division. The master division is for the scary people. And after a few contests and a few awards at lower levels, I compete in the master division. And this is one of the pieces that put me there, that won me awards to put me in that master division. So let's see, I will bring this over here. Now it doesn't work quite as well because this is on a mannequin, and the mannequin doesn't have arms and doesn't move the way I move. So I'll reshare on my Instagram some photos that should give you a better feel of how this dress is put together. We've got these nice drapey sleeves here, and you can see this rainbow sherbet color effect kind of a thing here. There's an undergown, which is the same rainbow sherbet effect here. You can kind of see some of those color changes here. And the drapey overgown. And then I bring the mannequin around back here. You can see in the back, we have this purple, pink, orange, yellow color change going on here. And this had to be hand dyed. In fact, this was my first major dyeing project. Because why start with just a simple color change when you can start with this nightmare confection? And I am so proud of this. Let's see if I can get you some closer up details here. So the collar is mother of pearl. It is the kind of veneer you'd put on a guitar. So like a guitar inlay in the body of it, which is all glued and cut. The necklace is made out of Sintra plastic here, but I didn't want to try and paint these color details, so I just bought real mother of pearl and used that. So silk chiffon, the bias bindings are satin. They're the kind of bindings you put on like a child's quilt because that's what they look like. They're not the same color as the rest of the garment because they didn't take dye the same way. This is in the original. I will defend this. Like so. Then we get that very subtle color transition. As we come down, we get a little bit more orange in there. And then we get some of this pink. And we come down towards the bottom where we've got this shell detail, and the fabric here is more of a purple, sort of a lilac kind of a color. It's very delicate on the chiffon because the chiffon is so sheer, it kind of picks up whatever's behind it as well. Right, you can get my hands through it, which is the whole point here. And you can see the color change a little better. This is the silk undergown, so that's a little more sort of a lavender gray color here. And if I lift the drape up out of the way, you can see you've got that pink, or it's designed to do that. We've got the undergown here, yellow, again, sort of that, it's a real kind of a faint orange, and then gets into the pink colors down here. So it's very subtle, which is absolutely on purpose. That color looks delicious. Thank you. Yeah. So I often call this the rainbow sherbet gown, because that's really what it looks like to me. It looks like rainbow sherbet. It also looks like a sunrise. And I spent, so I made this dress in 2012. I competed it in 2012 costume contests, and I spent probably a month of the construction process. I was busing to work at the time, and so I'd go out and stand at the bus stop around sunrise because it was winter, so sunrise is stupid late here. So I'd be out at the bus stop as the sun was rising, and I'd look up at the sky, and I'd be like, what if I just like cut my dress out of the sky? Can I just do that? Because that's the color gradient I wanted, that perfect subtle change of just gradually getting brighter and warmer. And I was like, can I just do that? And I spent like a month not dyeing this, working on the wig, working on the necklace and the matching, there are armbands as well that hold the drape up, which again, that mannequin doesn't have arms, so you can't really see it, but I promise. Working all of these other pieces and going, but I'm gonna ruin it. If I never dye it, it will always be the perfect dress of my dreams because it won't be real. It'll always be the perfect one in my mind. But eventually you have to do it if you're gonna do it. And you have to accept that it won't happen if you don't do it. And I eventually talked myself into it. And I remain. So that was 2012. And it's been 9 years, and I remain incredibly proud of this dress. I still wear it. Not often because it's so delicate and because it's got a long train to it. Like my Galadriel I talked about last time, I don't want to be trailing this through the streets, but I do still wear it, and I do get a lot of use out of it, because it's just so perfect, and I got it so right. I think I told the story before about going to the museum when they had it on display, the real one on display at the Mopop Museum, and going to the museum and just being terrified. What if I got it wrong? There's normally another flower piece here. I took it off for right now because it's finicky and needs a little bit of repair. What if I get it wrong? What if I ruin it? And what if all I see is what I got wrong? What if everything what I see when I look at this dress is just everything I got wrong? And I was just so afraid. I was terrified. Because what if I could never wear it again? But I went and I saw that, we came around the corner and I saw the gown and the mannequin. And I just went, yes! Because I'd gotten it right. And Padme is a character that means so much to me, that I was just like, I got her right. I did her justice. And then I had a lot of feelings. Yeah. So that's Padme. Let me stop giving y'all motion sickness with the second cam. You were saying nice things to me in chat. I'm very proud of it. I'm thinking of redoing a silk dye so that I can make myself a matching face mask. Not that I'm gonna wear this out, around, but like for occasional for photo shoots or something, I think it'd be sort of striking on. One of our local Princess Leia's has a hand embroidered mask with the Royal House of Alderaan logo on it. And so I kind of want to do one with the royal symbol of Naboo, and then we can be, you know, mother-daughter pairs together, which would be pretty fun. So let's talk a little bit about dyes for Padme. So I said we'd do dye test swatches. Here we go. Here are my dye tests. The top row, so these are, and again, they're labeled because I'm an organic chemist. Dye color test, you can see our dates here. 2012, like I said, January. The numbers that you can see, 422, that's the dye number of the color. So I didn't write down the full lot or anything, but I wrote down the color number so I can look that up again. 1.5%. The two pieces are here, the silk charmeuse of the undergown and the silk chiffon of the top gown. Normally, if you want to get the color the dye is supposed to be, you want to use about 3% by weight of dye to fabric. That's usually what gives you the recommended color. So I started this at 1.5%, just to see what would happen. And those still came out way too, like I knew they were going to be too bright, but I tried it to see what it would look like. This one I switched down to 0.75 here, and you can see they came out a lot paler. And I also have a note, removed when the color seemed good. And you can see here, we're much closer to what I ended up wanting in the final gown. And then I did some tests with the polyester blanket binding, and you see it does pick up a little bit of that color, which again is what we see on Natalie Portman's gown. A little bit of color change. I then have, let's show it better on here, I think. I helpfully wrote on the thing, so you can 0% read that through camera. But it says, test number 4, variegation silk charmeuse. Label everything. You never know when you're going to need it. Because not only did I need to get the colors to be the right color, I needed to get that rainbow sherbet transition, that smooth color transition between the colors. So yellow, orange, pink, purple. And the way you get that is you have you dunk one in and you dye it the right color and you keep the whole thing wet. You dunk it in there up to roughly where you want the color change to be. And you move the fabric in and out of the dye so that you get a gradation, so that it's not all bright yellow. It's yellow and it kind of fades out. And then you take a little ways into that and you dunk that in the orange and you kind of do this number, sort of move it back and forth. So the parts you want to be vivid orange are in the dye bath, and you let the ends kind of come in and out so that it you let the ends come in and out so that it fades. And then you do the same thing with the pink and the same thing with the purple on the end of it here. And I did like I said, I did some tests and I did some, oh God, but what if I screw it up? Which is sort of, so it's always kind of the nature of the project is to have that sort of stress about it. But one of the things I've found, interestingly enough, is that a lot of times when I'm procrastinating and freaking out and panicking and I just can't make myself do it, it's because I don't know how yet. And sometimes sitting there stressing about it, my back brain, my hind brain is actually solving the problems. Or it's coming up with the right questions to ask. And so I'll sit there and I'll be like, I don't know, I don't want to. What if I just cut it out of the sky? Can that be a thing? Like, obviously, that's not a solution. But eventually your brain starts to be like, okay, here's what you need to know. Here's what you don't know yet. Go solve that. Go do these kinds of tests or try these things or that things. And then you learn what you need to learn to figure it out. So not all procrastination is productive. Like, I'm not here to say that. But a surprising amount of it is. Like, your hind brain is working on it even when your forebrain is just like, stop screwing around and just do the thing. Sometimes there's a reason you're not doing the thing. And sometimes you're just lazy and you just don't wanna. And that's valid too. You don't have to wanna. So here are my fabric tests for the gown we're working on now. And so this is where we started. Everything is, again, referenced to the notebook. But these are my base starts. This is the darker blue color I got because I wasn't sure how blue I wanted. This is the seafoam green I ended up using. And I went through a whole bunch, and you can see, you know, I was like, okay, well, a little bit of this. What if I mix a little bit of that, a little of this? Try, you know, a little bit hint of a little bit of blue. Try adding some different other. I had lots of blue dyes. I've done lots of, for whatever reason, I've done a lot of blue. So I kind of played around with it, and like do this, do that. And these are some of my. This is my first test. Like the first time I dyed the real thing, it just came out a little too light. This was the test of, let me take this but over dye it with blue. This is part of the final, it's an extra scrap from the final garment, so that's why it's weirdly shaped here. So I had to go through all of these tests to get where I wanted to end, where I finally ended up. Admittedly, where I ended up was almost exactly where I started, because it's basically just that green seafoam green dye just as it is. But you have to go through the process to get there. You got to do all of these tests to get where you end up. You really do have to. Trust the process. You'll get there eventually. Yeah. So the last piece I wanted to share was some of my solid color dyeing. I've done some other variegation stuff. It's super fun. And like, once you do enough tests and you get a feel for moving the fabric in and out, it's not that bad to do. It's not that hard. My fingers are slightly orange, but sort of only by comparison to other parts of my skin. So the last one is my Jedi robes. So if you were here last week, you saw Jedi General Piva, who all of her garments are store-bought fabric. I made them all myself, but the colors are store-bought. This is my first Jedi, and the one I love most and am most like. This is Jedi Knight Anharat Verkio's costume here. Everything you see used to be white. Used to be plain, bright white. And I chose to dye it because I wanted to be able to pick exactly what colors they were. Also, because this fabric, this dye, is called Mars Dust, and I thought that was so cool. And I looked, I was like, yeah, that's a Jedi color. That's a nice brown with a little bit of red in it. That's a Jedi color. And so I have dyed it Mars Dust, and I just love that about it so much. So that is all. This was all linen. It is lined with a cotton that is dyed the same color. And this, actually, we're going to go and switch to the second screen so you can see that a little bit better. So it's lined. This on the left is the outer linen fabric here. This is the lining, which is just a simple cotton. I dunked them in the same dye bath at the same time, but they didn't take the color quite the same way. This is a little more of that redness to it. This is a little more neutral. And so it turned out slightly, and I'm fine with that. Like, I'm not mad about it. Also, you can never see the lining. But I thought it was kind of interesting that they didn't come in quite the same. What about Tatooine dust? You could think of it as Tatooine dust. I have one of my Star Wars friends is a Mars geologist. She is probably the coolest job I know. She is currently helping to drive Perseverance, and she helps run the cameras on Curiosity and Perseverance. And so part of it was like, hey, Catherine, is this really what Mars looks like? And she's like, yeah, it is. That was pretty cool. So these the tabards here are that same denim. The scrap denim we were testing was scraps from this denim. And this here is a different kind of lighter weight linen. So this is heavier linen, the tunic, and then the tabard is lighter linen, and the texture's a little different. It's deliberately cut and folded like this. It's supposed to be crinkly. I mean, I didn't iron it, but like this is on purpose. It's not ironed. So again, you can see that the two different, the linen and cotton, same dye, but they took it differently. This is a little bit redder looking. This is a little browner looking. which I always kind of fascinated. And like again, I decided, yeah, that's great. I'm not mad about it. But I did tests first. I'm like, oh yeah, well, that's fine. They're still close enough. They belong together clearly, even if they're just slightly subtly different. So that's one of the things I love with dyeing fabric is just that infinite customizability. If I want, if I want my Jedi to be specific colors, I can do that. If I and sometimes I don't, right? Sometimes I'm just like, what if I just buy it? Um, but a lot of times I want something specific, and that specific thing is I got to do it by hand. Whether it is getting the specific color I want for Padme Amidala, which like it's all custom, baby. I'm trying to think. If I make a fourth one of hers, which let's be real, I probably will. The fourth one, I will probably end up being able to use store-bought fabric, store-colored fabric. I don't weave my own, Christ. I will probably be able to use store-colored fabric um, for that particular one, well, one of her Clone Wars outfits. But for most of them, you just got to dye it yourself. They did. They dyed this themselves, and they dyed those flame handmaidens, the ones everyone talks about, the orange, red to orange kind of ombre colors. Those are all hand dyed. Most of them have to be. So it opens up that whole world of custom of get this color, get the Jedi layout exactly how you want. And it's really useful. It's really powerful. It's also what I used for my Starfleet uniform. So that whole conversation around Captain Kirk's uniforms and what the heck color is it? Um, I dyed my own because I wasn't satisfied. Like I was like, I'm not. I could have tried to color match something from the store, and I could have tried to be like, yeah, I think it looks like this. And I was like, it will be less hassle to just custom dye it. So I mixed my own yellow with a little bit of blue in there to hint to shift it towards the green, but not all the way. And I ended up fussing around with it, and I dyed my own for that. It's in my closet. I'm not going to go grab it, but I dyed my own for that. And yeah, so I love fabric dyeing. It is perfectly safe to do at home. You don't have to, don't drink it, don't lick it. But it's perfectly safe to do at home. Get some dedicated, anything plastic should be dedicated for that. But you can, use whatever glass casserole. Like this was all dyed in casserole dishes. I had to buy extra because I only had two and I needed four, one for each dye. But I dyed that in casserole dishes, which I still use to this day. I don't really need four casserole dishes to make casseroles out of, but I have them because I needed them for this. So it's surprisingly accessible. It's super fun, and it opens just this infinite world of possibilities around color and transformation and everything like that. So yeah. Other questions, thoughts, concerns? You should totally try it. So again, my source for dyes, fabric that's white and easy to dye, and information is Dharma Trading Company, DHARMA, and they have just vast tutorials and instructions and guides and tips and tricks and everything. And so, like, start there. Do I find different materials for your dye buckets affect the dye outcome? Probably you should avoid. So I have a big aluminum pot that I use for dyeing when I'm not using it for storage of random crap, which is what it's currently being used for. I have a very large aluminum stock pot, and it's probably not the best of materials because it's certainly been stained. And if this is getting stained, it's like I said, it's full of crap. If this is getting stained, then it's a possibility it could be changing the color of the dye itself as well, because you can be getting a chemical interaction between the aluminum metal and the dyes. So it's probably not your best bet. But if you've got like a stainless steel pot, that should be fine. Glass should be fine. Plastic, as long as it's heat safe plastic, should be fine. Stuff like that. Yeah, that's my feeling around that. Is like just stick with stainless steel and you're probably a little bit better off than the aluminum. But this is what the restaurant supply store sells. And it's nice and big, which is helpful if you're dyeing a lot of fabric. Because you gotta, like I said, you gotta let it swim around and everything. But I didn't need it, and it was too much empty space to not be filled with stuff. So it's full of junk right now. Yeah. So it is 9:01 o'clock. 9:01 o'clock. Yes, that's how we talk about time frames. So our upcoming Geek Girl Con Twitch schedule is the 13th. That's this Thursday, is a Let's Play of It Takes Two, which I believe is going to feature the two Alyssas of our Twitch team, or maybe some other people. But last time it was both Alyssas, which is pretty funny. Saturday, which is an unusual day for us, the 15th, we're streaming Let's Play of Subnautica Below Zero. And then every Tuesday and Thursday after that, it's all kinds of cool different stuff. We've got some RPGs, some more Let's Play. We've got an Asian American Pacific Islander History Month panel on the 21st. And if you want to catch the next part of this, then that is next month. That is the June 8th. And we'll be talking about patterning, designing, and like the actual construction of the garment, including I think it's like 12 different pattern drafts that I went through for this thing. So we're going to talk about all of that. Yes, the chat informs me it is. In fact, it takes two Alyssas, which is funny. We call one of them Prime because she got there first and because she helps, like she's the one in charge of all these things. So, yeah, thank you for coming. Yeah, this is Ripley, last survivor of the Nostromo, signing off.